This is a life many people can only dream of. To escape the noise and pressure of the city, one man spent 2.5 years in the wilderness, collecting hundreds of massive logs to build a luxury home worth millions. At just 30 years old, Matthew grew tired of the factory routine and the endless 9-to-5 life. Using his savings, he bought a remote piece of land in Slovenia, determined to create his own dream home from nothing. Luckily, the surrounding forest was rich in natural resources. Century-old spruce trees, broken by snow and time, were scattered throughout the land. To protect the environment, Matthew only selected mature logs with a diameter of about 1 meter. After removing the branches, he relied on a tractor to transport each log to the construction site. But this was only the warm-up. Fresh timber needed to be air-dried for long periods, then carefully stripped of its bark to remove hidden insect eggs and extend its durability. Life in the mountains was physically demanding. From morning until dusk, Matthew was either shaping logs or hauling timber through the forest. As the seasons changed and winter arrived, he invited several close friends to help speed up progress. After strict measurements and precise leveling, the real construction finally began. Each log was split and carved with deep grooves, allowing them to lock together perfectly in a traditional log cabin structure. Natural wood is never perfectly straight, so every joint required patience and precision. Despite flying with chips and constant wear on the chainsaw, having friends by his side made the work far less overwhelming. With the assistance of a crane, the cabin steadily rose, log by log, transforming years of effort into a home built by hand and determination. Thanks to the thickness of each log, nearly 10 centimeters, once the walls reached 6 layers, the height was already sufficient to support the roof. The top beams were installed using the same notching and polishing methods as the walls, essentially a repeat of earlier steps. Still, Matthew worked late into the night, driven by his anticipation for the new home. Even as snow began to fall, he insisted on placing the final beam before stopping. But if you think the work was finished, this was only the beginning. The next day, Matthew used an excavator to dig out the land behind the cabin. To improve the view and prevent soil from collapsing, he decided to build a solid platform foundation. After all, a strong foundation means lasting stability. Just 3 of the main support pillars required 4 people to lift, and once hollow bricks were added to form reinforced walls, the structure became rock solid. The platform was even more demanding. Beneath dense steel rebar, 2 full truckloads of concrete were poured. This was a house built to last for generations. While waiting for the concrete to cure, Matthew turned his attention back to the logs. Years of exposure had darkened their surfaces, so he spent an entire week polishing over 100 square meters by hand, an exhausting task he had seriously underestimated. The next stage of work became much simpler. All that was needed was to mark each log in sequence, so that with the help of a crane, the already assembled house could be dismantled layer by layer. Before reassembly could begin, rubber pads were fixed along the edges of each groove, then packed with thick degreased wool to improve air tightness and increase friction. Holes were also pre-drilled between every layer to allow for additional reinforcement later. Once the platform was fully waterproofed and shock-absorbing, the logs were assembled one by one according to the markings. To avoid complications during later construction, holes for interior wiring were drilled in advance, and with every new layer, 20-centimeter wooden pegs were driven in to lock the walls firmly in place. With all 4 walls back in place, it was time to focus on roofing the cabin. To install beams weighing over 1,000 pounds, Matthew used traditional mortise and tenon joints, reinforced with stabilizing supports. With the help of a crane, the beams were set onto walls, creating solid, load-bearing support for the roof and ensuring long-term stability. Under the scorching midday sun, the roof felt almost unbearable. Once the heavy lifting was done, Matthew kept the momentum going, taking over from his friends to seal the roof. Compared to the complex walls, laying the wooden boards was straightforward, and the cabin finally began to look complete. With the weather turning unpredictable, Matthew moved fast. To protect the newly built cabin from rain, he began roof waterproofing the very next day, fixing a grid framework that also left space for the roof tiles. To help the roof carry more weight, Matthew carefully added an extra row of wooden beams in the attic as reinforcement. It was clear he fully understood the strength of triangular load-bearing structures. With limited funds, he sourced inexpensive second-hand roof tiles. They lacked a brand-new shine, but their aged character perfectly matched the rustic style Matthew was after. To ease her husband's burden, his wife joined the work without hesitation. With his brother-in-law's family helping to pass tiles along, the four of them formed an efficient assembly line, turning a demanding task into something far more manageable. With the cabin finally crowned by its golden roof, Matthew grew even more eager for the day it would be finished. As the weather turned colder and every breath formed a cloud of white mist, he knew it was time to seal the attic. For safety, he decided to lay the attic floor first, preventing any dangerous missteps during construction. When Matthew returned after spending time with his family in the city, the forest was blanketed in snow. Thankfully, the cabin remained unchanged, although his stored timber was nearly gone. Owning vast woodland meant he could simply cut more trees, providing enough material to finish the remaining floors. After finishing the attic floor, Matthew smoothed the surfaces with a chainsaw before building the wall frames. With large windows left on both sides, the views here would be breathtaking. Once interior waterproofing was complete, the final ceiling work could begin. Because the window openings had been planned during the wall polishing stage, Matthew only needed to cut along the outlines to create perfectly shaped windows. To prevent heat loss, he carved grooves along the window frames and packed them with thick wool after careful sanding. This meticulous process alone took 2 full days, ensuring that once the doors and windows were installed, not even a trace of cold air could slip inside. With the cabin fully sealed, Matthew could finally move on to interior construction. Because all the wiring holes had been prepared in advance, his first priority was setting up the electrical system. Still, the tangled cables quickly became overwhelming. While Matthew was skilled in woodworking, electrical routing was outside his expertise. Thankfully, his father stepped in. Experienced with plumbing and electrical work, he patiently guided every step, from cable layout to connecting drainage pipes, carefully using a level to ensure perfect alignment for long-term reliability. At the same time, the indoor hot and cold water systems were installed, guaranteeing even a winter shower could reach 60 degrees. Once the complex network of pipes and wires was neatly organized, Matthew pushed forward without pause, pouring the floor next. This time, he mixed foam particles into the concrete, not to cut corners, but to reduce weight and improve insulation. Combined with the concrete base below and underfloor heating, it created an efficient system that was both warm and comfortable. Considering that the first floor houses a living room and kitchen, he chose to lay waterproof, wear-resistant tiles. Even if cooking later leaves oil stains everywhere, cleaning will be much easier. As winter came to an abrupt end, Matthew used his free time to clear land and start farming with his father-in-law, preparing thoroughly for the family's long-term future. At the same time, work on the second floor moved forward. As a future resting area, every wall needed thick insulation. The task itself wasn't difficult, but proper protection was essential to avoid irritation from the fibers. Once a plastic moisture barrier was added, large OSB panels were installed to seal the walls securely. With his budget running thin, Matthew chose to use wooden flooring for the attic ceiling instead of more expensive materials. Meanwhile, Work on the first floor was moving ahead at full speed. In his plan, the space would feature an open kitchen, a bathroom with separate wet and dry areas, and, most importantly, a spacious living room for guests. Once the interior layout was complete, the walls were carefully plastered. The smooth finish spoke volumes about his experience. Using the same method upstairs and with his wife's help, over 100 square meters were completed in just one day. Paired with natural wood tones, the white walls gave the cabin a refined hotel-like feel. While waiting for the indoor air to clear, spring became the perfect time to travel with family. Surrounded by forest views, fresh spring water, and brilliant night skies, Matthew felt nature's energy and healing power, strengthening his resolve even further. On the way back, Matthew passed an abandoned quarry and couldn't resist loading a few appealing stones into the truck. Back home, the ordered fireplace had arrived. Before installation, a wall opening was cut to route the flue outside. For better performance, the chimney was built slightly higher than the roof, with clamps secured at intervals to ensure it stayed firm even in strong winds. This fireplace was different from ordinary models. It came with a rear connection that could heat the underfloor system as well. For safety in the forest, Matthew fully wrapped it with fireproof bricks, then coated the exterior with mortar. The result was solid, but his wife wasn't impressed. That's when the stones he collected earlier came into play. Mixed with cement and carefully stacked, they transformed into a custom stone facade. Despite their irregular shapes, Matthew fit them together like a true Tetris master, each stone finding its place as part of the fireplace. Once completed, this perfect blend of modern and ancient elements could easily be called a work of art. Watching the new home slowly move closer to the dream he had imagined, the urge to move in right away grew stronger by the day. Over the next period, Matthew focused on laying the attic floor. To ensure his wife and children could live there with peace of mind, he chose healthier pine boards. This material has low formaldehyde content, and once installed, it fills the interior with a subtle natural wood scent. Owning vast woodland, Matthew often wandered through the forest in his spare time, occasionally rescuing a fallen tree along the way. He trimmed it down, keeping only the strongest core, then brought it home for a careful sanding and polishing. Before long, it transformed into something truly impressive. Based on the size of the tree base, he built a custom frame and secured it to four support posts with threaded bolts, creating a beautifully crafted stair platform. Thanks to his father-in-law's fully equipped wood workshop, the rest of the staircase came together smoothly. After his wife applied protective wood wax oil, everything was assembled in order and with precise measurements. Installation was effortless, making movement between floors far more convenient. From start to finish, after a full 2.5 years, Matthew finally fulfilled his promise, leading his family into a life far away from the noise and chaos. Free from worldly distractions, their days ahead are sure to grow better and better.